is that, can you hear me? Is that okay, Fiona?
Yep, that's absolutely fine. All looking good.
Lovely. So this is The Wolf in Your Dog, which a little presentation that I've written. Very brief rundown of how much wolf there still is in the modern dog, really. So we've got a wolf here and a dog. You can tell them apart very easily, and the reason we can do that is because of the changes from the evolutionary, ancestor of the wolf into the modern dog. So we have almond-shaped eyes on the wolf and stick-up ears, a long muzzle, and a particular, texture and type of fur. On the dog, you see the rounded eyes, and there's a two-color eye in this dog. Floppy ears, different colors, different texture and type of fur. So we can all tell a wolf from a dog these days, but they are essentially the same animal inside. So let's have a look. So a lot of people consider a dog a subspecies of grey wolf. So Canis lupus familiaris is the domestic dog, the modern dog. They only differ from wolves very, very slightly. So 1.8% of their genes differ, that's all. But it is worth noting, that we share a lot of genes with other animals as well. So although it doesn't sound like much at all, it does make quite a lot of difference nonetheless. So the grey wolf today, the grey wolf that we know today, evolved about 2.7 to 3 million years ago. So the dog didn't appear, the dog proper that we recognise today, modern dog, until about 15,000 years ago. But there are some new studies that suggest it's possible that there was something like a dog up to 135,000 years ago. But the only solid evidence that we have is for 15,000 years ago, really. So dogs and wolves are closely related enough to breed together. And you can see this in the coloration of a black wolf, because you don't get black wolves. If you see a black wolf at all, it's because it's bred at some point with a dog. It's some point in its ancestry, it's bred with a dog, because the black coloration is not seen in pure wolves. So breeding with domestic dogs is relatively common. Wolves don't seek out dogs to breed with, but if they come across them often enough and there aren't enough other wolves about, they will breed together quite readily. So it's possible that wolves were either domesticated in lots of places at different times, or there was one main domestication event followed by, several sort of 1,000 years of admixture, which is, dogs and wolves breeding together. And again, the data is a bit woolly on that. We don't know how many times wolves and humans got together and initiated domestication. So here's some dogs. You can see there's enormous differences. Big floppy ears, different coloured fur, smooth coats, hairy coats, little tiny dogs with squashed up faces, long-legged, really fast little dogs, very, very light boned and so on. But they are all the same basic structure and build. It may not look like it, but skeletally speaking and so on, they are the same inside. But they do vary quite a bit from wolves, obviously in their body forms. We humans have bred dogs for lots of reasons, things that people have found appealing. So fighting dogs, for example, have sort of shortish muzzles. They're bred with really good bite power, holding on to their opponents. You get those dogs with really, really crinkly, wrinkled faces. This is something that allows other dogs to sort of grab a mouthful of wrinkles, if you like, without really injuring, minor injuries to the face, if you like. These kind of really wrinkly dogs also it filters blood away from the eyes, it traps scent molecules, so sort of sniffing dogs have lots of wrinkles, and they can lose heat better through the surface area of all those wrinkled bits of face. Guard dogs tend to be sort of, big and muscular. They don't have great stamina for running or anything because they don't need to anymore. Wolves can run for a very long time. Wolves can run at top speed for about a mile, which in terms of canine stamina is amazing. But guarding dogs can't really run fast or far, but they don't need to because we've bred them for, guarding, and we feed them and look after them. Excuse me. So all kinds of domestic dog have been created, with humans, with all kinds of adaptations from the initial kind of wolf body and wolf form. And we've held on to all the characteristics that we liked or wanted for various reasons. So this is a picture of a dog, as you probably know if you've got a dog, who has rolled in something revolting, and looks very, very happy about it. Dogs really love novel smells, and they will often roll about in them and come home covered in, fox or badger or whatever. And these are the things that we kind of wish they wouldn't do, but this is very wolfy. This is a wolf trait, rolling in a novel scent. Taking it back to the pack, going, look what I found, here's a really interesting smell. It possibly to cover the scent of dog as well, so it sort of covers up the fact that they've been there. But you see lots of wolf behaviours still in the modern dog, body postures, some of the facial expressions and ear positions and so on. And obviously things like the play bow, as you'll be familiar if you've got a dog. When they're playing or play biting or whatever, they'll do this kind of exaggerated bow with the front legs down and the back legs up, which is a strong indication that I don't mean no harm, I'm playing with you. And dogs and wolves do that in exactly the same way. Oops, sorry, I jumped a slide. So we have this concept of neoteny with dogs. We keep dogs, obviously they're puppies when we get them, they grow into adults, as obviously, but they tend to, in terms of comparison to a wolf, they retain a lot of juvenile behavior and morphology. And this is what we call neoteny, staying playful, staying needy, in adult direction, in terms of the adults being the humans, the dog owners. Puppy proportions, puppy facial characteristics, which humans find appealing. There's nothing cuter than a puppy face, but a lot of adult dogs retain a puppy-like face as well. Like, think of pugs and sausage dogs and that kind of dog. Wagging tails, playing with toys, running for a ball and fetching, things like that. Being very strongly tied to family members, that human family, I mean, are all the things about domestic dogs that we love, I think, as humans, aren't they? Domestic dogs don't have, they don't need to hunt for food. They don't need to necessarily run long distances or, be particularly skillful or strong or good at problem solving or whatever. But they have, while they've sort of shrugged off the need to survive, the instincts to survive, what they have taken on are more social ties and more social skills, different social skills. Wolves are very socially skilled, but they're socially skilled with other wolves. Dogs are done entirely different, which is being very highly socially skilled with another species, which is humans. And that's the amazing thing about dogs, really. I think that they've been able to cross the species barrier in terms of sociality, which other animals have not done. Not as much, anyway, not all animals. So if you have a look at working dogs, you see individual wolf behaviours which humans have chosen on purpose, selected them out and bred them in. Territoriality, so that's what you want in a good guard dog. A guard dog that wants to guard a property or a space. A scent dog who's incredibly good at scenting, incredibly good at following a smell. We use these dogs, to sniff out drugs and money and all sorts of things, don't we now? Even medically, dogs have been trained to scent cancer cells and so on. These are all things that wolves can do, but we have chosen them in dogs in such a way that they don't really do anything else. So, for example, a guard dog is territorial. It barks when it sees people or strangers coming in, and that's what you want for a guard dog, obviously, to warn you that someone's coming. But they don't do a lot else. So we've chosen that skill from wolves. But guard dogs, they don't run long distances. They don't hunt. They don't, do many wolf behaviours beyond the barking and guarding and territoriality. So what we've done is select traits and then remove the dog's need to have any other sort of wolfy traits, really. So guard dogs don't do much more than guard, whereas obviously wolves do all of these behaviours as a natural animal living in the wild. So this is a hunting dog on point. Oops, gosh, sorry, I skipped a slide again, touching the mouse. This is a dog on point. So this dog has been bred and selected for this habit of raising a paw, sticking the tail out, nose towards the prey, indicating where it is, but without actually lunging forward and getting it. So it's an indicator rather than a hunter, as it were. Very specific behaviour. Wolves don't do pointing, by the way. This is something that only dogs really do, and humans have picked up that, if you get a dog that does a bit of pointing and you breed it with other dogs that point, you end up with a breed like this one, a pointer dog. If you have a sight hound, obviously they're bred for their good vision, the ability to detect movement usually. They're usually good at detecting things that are running away. Really, closely following a scent trail, like a bloodhound, that kind of thing. Again, selected especially for human use via, the breeding of domestication. It's very probable that the first things that humans saw in wolves that they thought would be really useful and helpful were their ability to hunt and their guarding and warning skills, because wolves are very good at those, obviously. Very, very good hunters and very good at warning, looking after pups and warning when strangers approach or other wolves approach or whatever. So those are probably the things that humans went for first when they came into proximity with wolves. I could stop there, actually, Fiona, if there were any questions at that point.
Yes, we've got one from Eunice. You talked sort of quite near the start when we were looking at the first picture of the wolf and the dog together, that the shape of the eyes had changed or is different. Eunice is asking, how did that change happen? I don't know if you can enlighten us a little bit about that.
I think that's a very good question. And I think the answer is that it's simply a side effect of selecting other attributes, and it's had the side effect of changing the eye shape. I don't think that was necessarily something that humans chose or selected. It's a side effect of other points of breeding, if you like, in the same way that, if we choose dogs with very crinkled up muzzles, crinkled up faces like pugs, you also get the side effect that they tend to have breathing problems. They look cute. They look sort of wrinkly and cute and, quite unusual and have boggly eyes, don't they? Sort of goldfish eyes. But they have troubles breathing. It's a side effect. It's not something that humans wanted, but it comes along with a very squashed up face.
Mm-hmm.
So I think the eye shape's the same.
Okay. Got another question here from Anne. You were talking about hunting dogs in point. Could you just explain what that means? What is pointing?
Yeah, sure. This dog on this slide here is in point. And what he's doing is he's scented, very good sense of smell. He's scented the prey, a bird probably, in this case, a pheasant or something like that. And his reaction to scenting the prey is to lift a leg in the direction of the prey and keep his head forward. So the nose, they always say the nose points to the prey, straight out tail is at the back of the prey. Do you see what I mean? So the prey is always forward of the dog. And some dogs do this when they see something interesting. They lift a leg and they'll point their head towards it. And it's that tendency that humans have picked up on and thought, well, that's really useful. I could, if I see a dog doing that, I'll know that there's, a bird in the next bushes or whatever. And that's what it's telling you, that there's a bird or whatever it is you're hunting is nearby. What they don't do is lunge forward, eat and kill the prey and eat it, because you don't want that. You actually want, them to just show you where it is, really, don't you? So unusually, given that this is a subspecies of wolf, this animal here, it doesn't actually hunt or take prey itself. It's the result of thousands of years, generations and generations of dogs who may have had a slight tendency to lift a leg when they saw prey. And humans have thought, well, I want a dog that does that, and bred them together. And eventually, genetically speaking, you get a dog whose habit it is to do that when they sniff the prey, but they never go and attack it. That's kind of been bred out of them, the tendency to kill and eat what they find. Sorry, I keep doing that.
Okay, we've got some more questions. This is a question from Miranda. Do some dogs still have pointy up ears? I guess some do, don't they?
They do, that's right, of course. And in some cases, other breeds, of dog have had floppy ears, and then people have decided I wanted them pointy, and I've actually had them operated on to stick them back up again, haven't they? Ear pinning, and so on, which is not legal anymore. It's not considered ethical. But yes, of course, there are breeds with pointy up ears still. Lots the various breeding habits. You have sort of pointy ears or little ears, or ears that flop down, or enormous ears that touch the ground. So ear sort of positioning and type is again something that humans have chosen in certain breed types, isn't it? So if you have a basset hound, what you're looking for there, if you like breeds of dog, is ears that touch the ground. And if you're having a Doberman, you want the more pointy up ears, I guess, don't you, in the particular look of the dog. But yeah, of course, you get pointy up ears, yeah.
Yeah, okay. Right, we have a couple of other questions, which I think we've probably just about got time for just now. This is a question from Angela. She's saying there seems to be a trend in feeding dogs raw meat, as wolves did originally. Does science support this trend?
That's a good question. I think wolves definitely eat raw meat, but you have to remember that as evolution moves on, domestication has changed the wolf into a dog. It's also changed the way, at least partially, the way that the gut functions too. So dogs will happily eat raw meat, but they'll also happily eat processed meat in the form of dried foods and so on. So I can't see any particular benefit to raw feeding compared to any other kind of feeding. I think the key is a varied diet. It's probably very boring for a dog to eat a bowl full of exactly the same food every single meal. And I think it's easy to forget that dogs like all kinds of food. They are omnivorous, really. You know, they'll eat fruit and vegetables and, you know, all kinds of cereals and all kinds of meats. So I don't see any advantage to it being a raw meat diet per se. But as, you know, research moves on in nutrition, I may be proved wrong on that, I guess.
Okay. Right, we'll do one more question and then we'll move on. But rest assured, everybody, we'll get to the rest of the questions at the end. Now, this is a question from Elizabeth. She's saying it's interesting how dog behaviour has become so specialised regarding human needs. Is there any difference in brain structure? So I guess that's between dog and wolf.
Sure. In gross terms, there isn't very much difference at all. But it would be equally, I could say that the brain of a chimpanzee and a human doesn't differ very much at all either. So the similarity is kind of along those lines, because humans and chimpanzees are also divided by less than 2% DNA. What is different is how much of the brain is devoted to social activity, how much of the frontal cortex, that's the front of the brain, the forehead, if you like, how much of that cortex is used in social behaviours, how much is it is devoted to bonding and attachment, and there's a greater level of activity in those parts of the brain. It's very difficult to assign bits of brain to function. You know, even if you do a brain scan, you can't sort of go, oh, look, there's the bit that does this and there's the bit that does that, because brains don't work in that way. You know, they don't have separate little chunks. It's completely interrelated body of neuronal tissue. So it's a difficult question to answer, but dogs have attributed more brain power, shall I say, to some social aspects of life that wolves don't use.
Okay, right. I think we'll move on now, Joanne. And as I say, we'll get to the rest of the questions at the end, everybody.
Okay, thank you. So, if humans observing wolves in the wild, you know, in our ancestral past, remember, in an evolutionary time, moves very slowly. So thousands of years ago, 15,000 years ago, we have evidence of the first actual dogs. So the process of domestication would have started long before that, because 15,000 years ago is the first evidence of dogs. Obviously, they didn't pop out of nowhere. So the process began long before that. So if humans had spotted behaviors in wolves that they thought would be really useful, that are really good hunters and they're really good guards and they're, you know, they're good at giving warnings, how would you begin to take a wolf and think, I like those attributes, and how would you make them into an animal that you can actually share your home with, you know, your family life with? So if I go to the next slide, you can see this is a cave painting from a cave in France, I believe, clearly depicting humans and some kind of bovine animal. Here is one of the very first known images of what must be a dog. And I say must be a dog because it has a curly tail. And wolves never have curly tails. Pure proper wolves, wild wolves, never have curly tails. So this has to be a dog. We can see as well from this image, it's got quite long legs. It looks like a good runner. It's quite a slim body, but with quite a big rib cage. So a big sort of hollow, if you like, where the organs contain the heart. Probably a very good runner with long, slender legs and a long, slender muzzle as well. No sign of big floppy ears here. These are little tiny pointy ears if you look closely. So we have to assume that the first dogs look something like this because it's the first bit of evidence that we have. There may be other parts of evidence that we don't yet have, we haven't seen yet. But a curly tail on a cave painting must be a dog. because you don't get curly tails on wolves, which I think is really interesting. So why did wolves become dogs, as it were? Again, it's a difficult question. There's a lot of debate about this and the answer to this. Why lose, why and how would you lose wild reactions to humans and have this formation of really strong bonds and devotion that we see in dogs today? Because it is an unusually strong bond, such that you only see in mothers and offspring, or parents and offspring, to be honest. Excuse me. So the probable start of this process is that humans were novel to wolves, and wolves found humans interesting rather than the other way around. So the humans were the novel environmental factor. It's unlikely that humans could have made wolves come to them, because they were very dangerous, much bigger animals than they are today even. And I think humans would have actually been on the menu rather than, the notion that they might be somebody you'd like to bond with or be a family member with. So it must be more likely that the curiosity of the wolf brought them closer to humans, rather than human curiosity taking them close to wolves, because the danger would be very great at that time in the evolutionary past. So the first stage of the relationship between wolves and humans who became dogs was probably that wolves found humans quite interesting. Apart from anything else, they would have left food remains. And although wolves are not naturally scavengers, in times of scarcity, they would, seek out any possible food stuff that they could. And human settlements might well have had, food remains around that they could just scavenge on. So here again, this is another cave painting. Again, you see the curled over tail, which you don't see in a wolf. Quite a long leggy body, isn't it? With like fairly long legs, long snout. And again, we've still got the little pointy ears. We don't have any floppy ears yet. We don't have any, unusual body form or anything at this point. This is about 15, I think it's about 12,000 years old, this painting. So the dog, at that point still looked very wolfy, I'd say. So the chances are, and I say the chances are because we don't absolutely know this, the process was probably determined by the wolves' pre-existing flexibility and adaptation to changing environments. Wolves are very good at coping with change. So they've moved, for example, into cities fairly easily. They've changed how they hunt for food. They'll hunt livestock if it's available sometimes. And it's very different hunting process. Hunting a sheep or a cow, very different hunting process to hunting something that runs very fast. Sheep and cows don't run very fast at all. So they are absolutely sitting ducks for wolves. So wolves are very adaptable. They can change their habits, their behaviors, and how they exist, if you like, in human settlements. So the chances are the ancestral wolf had this tendency too, and so was able to change its behavior slightly, maybe follow humans around a little bit to benefit from the food scraps that they left. But the humans would only be one factor at this time. It wouldn't just be humans that caused changes in the wolf. There would have been other factors. Evolution tends to work in favor of things that help animals to survive, and long enough to reproduce. So anything that makes survival more likely and reproduction more likely is going to continue into the subsequent generations. So wolves that, you know, let's say there was a harsh winters, if they could exist by living on the scraps left by humans and follow humans around a little bit to get extra little bits of food, they probably lived longer. They probably reproduced slightly better. So there was an advantage in terms of evolution. There was an advantage to following humans around a little bit in hard times. And then as soon as people, for whatever reason, had some kind of wolf in their midst, if you like, then the process of domestication, where humans would choose the wolves that were gentle and didn't bite them, you know, perhaps had a slightly unusual fur texture, maybe had, you know, a nice temperament. You know, humans would have chosen the wolves that had things they liked and bred them together. And then hopefully the next generation they would be a little bit more placid and have a little bit more unusual fur or maybe a different color. And eventually things like floppy ears would come, short muzzles, curly fur, curly tails, you know, all the things that have changed from the wolf to the dog. These are things that humans will have chosen in slight forms, you know, a wolf that was slightly different color, slightly less aggressive, that kind of thing. So it's a very slow process, remember, evolution. So these are images of wolves and ravens. Some of you might know that wherever you have wolves, you have ravens. They tend to, ravens and wolves hang about together quite a lot. You can see here, this is a wolf on a kill, lots of ravens nicking little bits of food, but the wolves never ever take advantage of the fact the ravens, they never kill them. They never pounce on them and kill them, because they have a mutualistic relationship. If ravens see something, some prey, they fly about overhead. They indicate to wolves that there's prey beneath, and then the wolf will go down and maybe rip open a carcass or kill whatever it is that's there. And then the ravens benefit as well. So they have a mutualistic relationship. Again, this is a wolf tendency to set up mutualistic relationships. It's part of the social habit of wolves. And it is possible, and ravens, I should say, ravens, very intelligent birds. It is possible that wolves began such a mutualistic relationship with humans in the same way that they do with ravens today. So humans, again, might follow wolves around a little bit because they would follow prey. Wolves might have followed humans around a little bit because sometimes they had prey and bits of food left over. And at some point, you can see how the two might come together. So wolves chasing prey. If humans were there at the same point that the prey was taken down, humans are probably able to kill that prey a bit quicker than the wolves could. The wolves would avoid injury, humans would kill it, and then you'd both benefit. They would both get a bit of that kill. And it's likely, given what we know about hunter-gatherer tribal cultures today even, it's likely that this kind of mutualism occurred because humans are very social, wolves are very social. We're both very good at taking advantage of the cues and indicators in the environment that are more likely to help us to survive. So chances are we set up a mutualistic relationship with wolves, and it's really difficult to work out which way round that might have happened. It's possible that it just came together because we're both hunting species. But again, fairly slowly. So, remember, evolution moves very slowly. These changes happened over thousands of years, not over a couple of years at all. So very slow process. So this is here's the adoring face of a modern dog. You see the absolute focus in the eyes, round eyes, again, floppy ears, obviously, this one. Coloration that you don't see in a wolf, this very kind of whitey, pet cream color. This is what we like. This kind of facial expression is what we like. This kind of adoration. Oh, sorry, I keep doing that. Adoration. Oops. Sorry about that. Sorry, that's me leaning on the mouse pad, sorry. So this bond that we see, this facial expression that we like so much, actually research indicates today that dogs can actually judge facial expressions of humans. They can tell the difference between lots of different facial expressions and body postures and body language, despite the fact they're a completely different species. And they have to translate, their body to your body and so on. So, for example, they walk on 4 legs, we walk on 2 legs. So when we use an arm, what's the dog actually doing there? Is he thinking that he's using a front leg, or is he able to work out that humans only walk on 2 legs? It's actually a complex cognitive task. Dogs are actually in translating what human body posture and body language actually means. So we've chosen in the past, things like colour and temperament and, size, let's say, probably floppy ears, long fur, short fur, whatever, attributes we were after. But in the process of choosing those body parts or those bits, colours, whatever, because lots of attributes are polygenetic, they're governed by more than one gene, obviously. They're governed by lots and lots of genes. What we've inadvertently also bred in is lots of other side effects, lots of other behaviours and abilities. So what we have probably bred in is this sociality, this ability to read the human face, the human body, to set up a meaningful relationship with another social species, even though we're completely different, very, very different. In some ways, you might expect this sort of relationship to have come between sort of humans and chimpanzees, an animal that's very, very similar, because dogs and humans are very, very different species. We've only really started, this whole kind of breed champions and animals, breed types, they've got to be this color, this size, this shape, they've got to have ears that do this, and their nose must only be this long, and so on. All these criteria set down by breeders and dog clubs and so on, has only actually happened in about the last 400 years. Before that, breeding, actual what we call today breeds of dog wasn't really something that humans did. What humans did before that was just breeding things that they wanted. So, a nice color, the right size, nice temperament, good at hunting, or good at guarding, or whatever it was that you chose. It's only in the last 400 years we've actually started the whole breed business, if you like. And people, spend extraordinary amounts of money on what we call breeds of dog now, don't they? Somebody told me the other day that they paid £5,000 for a purebred golden retriever. And I said, well, there's no such thing really, and not the most popular thing I've ever said, to be honest. But it's true, breeds are human constructions. They're not sort of natural animals at all. They're bred purely for whatever it is humans have chosen. And you get lots of nasty side effects with that kind of breeding. As I said, dogs with squashed up faces like pugs have breathing problems. Dogs with really, really wrinkled skin have skin problems, don't they? It's pretty well known, animals, Alsatians have hip problems and so on. And these are not bred in on purpose. These are just, unwanted side effects of breeding for other things, breeding for colour and size and, facial type and so on. But there are some dog breeds, even today, that are still really very wolfy, aren't there? So from my mind, what's called the primitive breeds are the ones that look most wolfy. It's ironic that they're called the primitive breeds, I always think. So huskies and malamutes look less like dogs and more like wolves, really, don't they? They really retain a wolfy look, and that's why they're so popular today, because there's a big following of wolves. Lots of people absolutely love wolves. I'm one of them. So if we have a look, I've chosen huskies and malamutes because just to illustrate that despite the fact they look very similar and they look very wolfy, they can be completely different kinds of animals. So, appearances can be deceptive is really what I'm saying here on the next slide. So there's a husky, and this one's a malamute. There's a husky that side, malamute this side. So very similar, very wolfy looking, I think. You can tell the difference, but they've got very sort of similar attributes, I think. So the similarities of those two types of dog, they're both really friendly with people. They're really people-oriented. They seek out people more than they seek out other dogs, actually. They have a double-layered coat, so they're both really good at enduring the cold. They shed their fur twice a year in like enormous handfuls. People actually, save all the fur and spin it and make it into clothing and all sorts of these breeds. They're really high energy. They need lots and lots of exercise every single day. Otherwise, they start to rip up the house and do all kinds of damage. They have really high prey drive, which means that they will chase. If they don't have appropriate prey to chase, they'll just chase whatever moves, really, and that could be cats or bicycles or cars, whatever. And because of that, they can't easily be kept with other pets, small pets, especially furries like rabbits and things. They would naturally just kill those. They need a strong owner who they respect, and by that I don't mean the old-fashioned sense of anyone who's dominant over them and punishes them or harms them in any way. That's not what I mean at all. A strong owner is just somebody who's very consistent. That the dog, it's very clear how life works and so on. There's a routine. Some things are not allowed and so on. So that's what I mean by a strong owner. And when I say not allowed, I mean things like biting people and ripping up the furniture is not allowed, those kinds of things. But it's the differences that I think are most interesting. So malamutes really love time with humans. Huskies are okay, they're good with humans, but they're completely happy to be left as well. They're independent and much more aloof than a malamute. Malamutes don't live very long. They have much more health problems. So they look similar, but a malamute is a much less robust animal. A husky is a sort of pack family member, if you like. And malamutes like one person. They tend to latch onto one person and have a bond there. Malamutes are much bigger and heavier, although physically, to look at, they look similar sizes. Malamutes have much heavier, thicker bones. So they might be similar in size, as it were, but the build is very different. Huskies are light and fast. Huskies love to live with people, but other dogs as well. Malamutes perfectly happy just to stay with humans. Huskies tend to live longer. They don't have nearly as many health problems. And some people, it's a difficult one, it's difficult to test. Some people think that Huskies are much more intelligent and cunning compared to Malamutes, who are considered a little bit dopey. So I've just chosen those two to indicate really how, however wolfy and similar, some breeds may look, they've actually lost quite a lot of wolf traits and wolf abilities. And they even differ between each other, even though they're the same subspecies of wolf. They have very different attributes because of domestication and how people have chosen to breed particular things in and breed out other things. So one of the things, for example, is this shape here, this heart-shaped sort of forehead, the fur. Somebody somewhere has thought, well, I like that, that's nice, and that's a desirable attribute rather, that nice little kind of eyebrow shape there. And the pale eyes, again, somewhere in the ancestral past, a dog wolf, let's say, would have been born perhaps with one blue eye, and humans immediately, being humans, would have thought, oh, I like that, that's unusual and nice, and try and get another one of those, breed those together. And they are unusual and nice. We like novelty, don't we? We like different things. So whatever actually happened in terms of, how did humans and wolves come together and have this incredible bond and shared sociality? It's a fascinating subject. It's a fascinating process, I think, domestication. It causes all kinds of changes that were never intended. There's side effects of lots of traits being polygenetic, being governed by lots and lots of different genes, not just one gene. But if you have a little bit of wolfy knowledge and dog knowledge, and you realize, where some of your dog's behaviors are coming from, I think you can probably appreciate the similarities and the differences, because I think dogs are an amazing, novel animal, and they are the most popular pet in the UK. So that, we are dog lovers. We really are a nation of dog lovers. So on this slide, obviously this is half a wolf, half a dog. You can see the differences. This is a wolf. You see the almondy eyes, point up ears, the coat, the familiar pelage, the familiar coloration and fur type there. But these on this side are wolf-dog hybrids. And I think if you look closer, you can see that they are, can't you? You can see this kind of half dog, half wolf, and this one too. These are fairly popular, these half, wolf hybrids, fairly popular in America. And they're extraordinarily dangerous. So don't be tempted ever, because they are neither wolves nor dogs. They're really unpredictable. They find themselves, unsure of how to behave in the social situation. They find themselves in people's houses and so on. So yeah, these wolf-dog hybrids are another matter. They're another matter altogether. Very far cry from the sort of domesticated dog evolved from wolves. These half and half animals, we don't fully understand, although they're really quite popular in some places. But I wouldn't have one. And that is the end there, Fiona. So if there were any more questions, that would be fine.
Yeah, thanks so much for that. I don't know if we want to stop sharing. We can see you again. Yes, we've got quite a lot of questions actually. So I'm just going to launch in. That was really, really fascinating. Now, let me just start from the top. Let me see, we've got lots of questions. Right. Right, here we are. So sort of picking up from where we left off earlier, we've got a question from June, and this is a favourite subject of mine. She's talking about border collies. I used to have one of those. Fabulous dog.
Me too.
She's asking, how do border collies have the tendency to bring sheep together? She's saying our collie would round up humans in the evening when everybody was walking along the beach, and they do that.
They do. I think because wolves, you know, they will hunt a herd of animals. They will, the tendency that they have is to work as a pack. You know, they're cooperative hunters, and they will round up the herd first to, you know, so they get an indication of who's the oldest and weakest, or the, you know, the youngest. To round them up a bit, make them run around a bit and see which ones fall behind, and then those are the ones that they actually kill off. Which is why people say, you know, wolves are important in the ecosystem, because they actually kill off the sick and diseased animals. You know, you keep populations healthier. And I think collies are an example of one of those wolf behaviors, you know, that herding, that rounding behavior. Again, some human at some point has thought, you know, when farming became something that humans did, somebody has thought that would be really handy. You could actually sort of, you know, bring them all together in a bunch. And that's essentially what collies do. They round, you know, they actually can't resist rounding things up. I've seen collies rounding up chickens and, you know, children and, you know, all kinds of animals, because they actually can't resist grouping things together in that way. It's definitely a wolf behavior that's been carried forward in domestication.
Okay, well, I hope that answers your question, June. Now, a question here from Ian, and I guess we kind of possibly touched on this a little bit at the end when you were talking about the wolf-dog hybrids. Can wolves be domesticated?
No, is the quick answer to that.
Yeah.
You can tame a wolf, but taming and domestication are completely different things. So you can have a tame wolf that will come to you and eat out of your hand, let's say. You might even be able to put it on a lead and take it for a walk. But given the right stimuli, that wolf will turn its back and not look back at you, does not need you, is perfectly capable of living independently, hunting alone, living in the wilderness. And so taming and domestication are very different. Domestication takes thousands of years, and it changes the morphology and the genetic makeup of an animal, whereas taming only changes behavior. Taming is just gaining a little bit of an animal's trust, and so that it will, you know, come to you in a way that perhaps it wouldn't normally come to you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, we've got a question here from Yvonne. Now, we're obviously talking about, you know, the modern dog descending from the grey wolf. Yvonne's asking, is it possible to trace dog genetics back to the desert or timber wolf? So I don't know what the connection between those and the grey wolf.
The ancestral wolf is often put down as Canis lupus occidentalis, the Latin. But you're absolutely right. There is some genetic lineage to the timber wolf. And also it's confusing because there are many kinds of wolf still in extant species, which means they're still living today. And we tend to think of dogs being descended from the wolf as it is today, but dogs are descended from the wolf as it was 350 million years ago, you know, so it's not the same animal. And that's the difficulty, I think. So there is some genetic evidence, if you like, for the lineage of the timber wolf, but it's difficult. It's mitochondrial, so it's passed down only from females, from the mothers. So we have mitochondrial DNA evidence, and that obviously reduces the amount of evidence that you have, because you only have the evidence from females. I'm not absolutely sure of the answer to that in short, but you're absolutely right. There is some evidence there, some genetic evidence.
Okay, and there was a sort of related question from Yvonne as well. She's talking about in India you've got the yellow wild dog, in Africa you've got wild dogs, Australia as well, and also the US. Are these canines genetically exclusive, or have they evolved from domestic dogs?
They haven't evolved from domestic dogs for sure. At some point very far back, they may share a common canid ancestor, but actually those what we call wild dogs sometimes aren't really dogs at all. And they are their own lineage, if you like. They actually are not part of the family tree of Canis lupus at all. And the confusion, I think, is in the name sometimes. So, for example, there's an African dog called a dhole. Not, we don't know very much about the dhole. They're called African dogs, but they're not really dogs at all. They're another form of canid. So no, those animals are not descended from dogs, and they are only descended in the very, very distant evolutionary past to other ancestral animals like the wolf. Very long time ago, if there is a connection, very, very long ago.
And this then touches on a question from Ian, which is about what's the relationship between dogs and foxes?
Again, foxes are kind of dog-like, but they're not dogs at all. They share some attributes. They share some, appearance-wise, anatomically, and so on. They're mammals, and they're social, and they share some of those elements. But again, they're not dogs. Foxes are foxes and dogs are dogs. They're just similar animals in the same way that you might say, something that's not related but looks similar. They're nothing to do with each other. They just have sort of similar attributes, because evolution works on solving evolutionary problems in similar ways, and so it comes up with animals that end up looking quite similar but aren't actually related. And that's true of the fox and the dog. Right.
Okay. Here's an interesting question. I don't know if this is one you can answer, but I'm going to ask it anyway. This is from Ruth. We're talking about domesticated cats here. So domesticated cats seem to have retained more of their wild characteristics than dogs have. They still hunt and they're very much more independent. Do we know why that is?
We do know why that is. The simple answer to why that is because cat domestication is only about 7,000 or 8,000 years old. And so dogs have had twice as long to evolve with humans. So cats absolutely retain more of their wild habits because they're only halfway through the process compared to dogs. Cats have just not been domesticated for anything like as long as dogs.
Right. Well, that is quite a simple explanation.
Which explains, cats tend to be rather independent, don't they? And you have a sense that the cat owns you, don't you? And you don't own the cat, and so on. That's why, because they are essentially perfectly capable of living wild, aren't they?
Okay, I'm going to keep going with the questions because we've still got a few, and I think it's worth sort of carrying on for a bit longer. So, question from Sue. How you talked about, you don't see a curled tail in wolves. That is a dog trait. How did that come about? I mean, is that evolution or is that breeding?
That would be what happens, as you will know, from animal offspring of all kinds. Every now and again, a genetic mutation occurs. Genetic mutations can be negative, have bad effects. They can have good effects, or they can have neutral effects. So at some point in the domestication of wolves, dogs got a bit smaller, they got a bit lighter, they got a kind of temperament, they got softer fur and so on. And in the process, they also, some of them got curly tails. And it will be a genetic mutation which occurs often. Mutations are very common. They occur all the time. Mostly we don't even know what they are because they're neutral. They don't have any effect on us. And this would be a neutral mutation. It doesn't cause any problems. It doesn't really confer any benefit either. It's a fairly neutral mutation of the tail shape. It's to do with the gap between the ligaments. The small gaps between the ligaments causes curling. But again, probably a human somewhere saw a slightly curly tail and thought, well, I like that. I'll keep that one and breed that with another curly one, and maybe I'll get curly tails. And of course we did get curly tails. So yeah.
Okay. Now we've got a question here from Sally, which actually is quite an important one, I think. Can you trust your domestic pet not to show wolf-like instincts? I guess in a lot of ways, you hear a lot of horror stories, don't you?
Sure.
I think to maintain a guard and not.
Yeah, the problem is that we only hear the, sort of fabulously awful stories, don't we? We don't tend to hear of all the thousands and thousands of dogs that don't attack their owners or don't kill a child or, whatever it is. We only hear about the very rare occasions where they do. So it's a rare occurrence, but I would say, leaving a big dog alone with a baby or a little child is not a great idea, is it? Because whichever way you look at it, this is an animal with strong bite power, sharp teeth, sharp claws, and so on. And this is a helpless child or a baby. Putting the two together is not a great idea, whatever the dog is like, I would say. And, there have been stories, I have come across stories where dogs have been absolutely fine for years, and then something has, been done to them. Usually they've usually been pushed to the limit in some way, and they've absolutely turned and attacked somebody. So I would say it's always in them. They are a subspecies of wolf, that they don't stop being a subspecies of wolf, no matter how cute they look or how soft they have become with you. There are still stimuli out there that could set them off, usually negative things that are being done to them, I'd have to say. So lots of children get bitten, for example, because they do things to dogs that they don't like, like they pull their ears or pull their fur or something, or make a loud noise in their face. They don't like it. But obviously children don't know that, so I just say a potentially bitey, dangerous animal and a little child or whatever is just not a good combination on their own.
Yeah. Okay. Right, we're going to take one more question, and then I think we'll need to stop, I'm afraid, folks. But any questions that we haven't answered, we're certainly going to round them up, and we'll get them answered afterwards. But this is an interesting one from Sue, and it's one that is talked about here in Scotland, where I am. Do you think we should reintroduce the wolf to the wild? And they're particularly talking about that in Scotland, in the Highlands, where it was native. Yes,
of course. Well, I've had the privilege of working with wolves, and the one thing that was absolutely clear to me, I was in a wolf pack. I had to sign away my life. They said if they kill you and eat you, it's not our fault, and so I had to sign away my life to do it. But they're not interested in people, I would say. They're absolutely, humans have very little interest to wolves. They sniff you over, they come and look at you. You're just not very interesting species to them. They don't see you as food. They don't see you as that interesting, to be honest. So I would say, yes, I'd love to see them reintroduced into the wild. They're not a danger to humans on the whole. If you've heard about any wolf attacks, probably in Canada or somewhere like that, they're usually very unusual circumstances or something very odd has happened. Yeah, I'd love to see them in the wild. I think the issue would not be them harming people at all. The issue would be in how to keep them and livestock apart, I think.
I was just about to say that. I think the farmers might have a slightly different view.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. Okay. Right. Well, I'm afraid, folks, we're going to have to leave it there. That was absolutely fascinating. Thank you so much, Joanne.
Thank you.
I really
My
enjoyed
absolute
that.
pleasure.
And I hope everybody else did. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to launch the poll as usual. Let me just find it. Let me just get that onto the screen for you. And I'll tell you what's happening next week. Now, next week, again, is something very different, although we are still actually talking about animals. Next week, we're going to hear the story of Wojciech, the soldier bear, adopted by a group of Polish soldiers in transit across Persia in the spring of 1942. We'll hear about Wojciech's exploits, culminating in him carrying shells up to the guns at Monte Cassino, would you believe? And ultimately to a statue of him being erected in Princes Street Gardens in Edinburgh, which I have walked past very many times myself. So I'll certainly be interested to hear why that statue is there. So I hope you will join us for that next week, same time, same place. And just a little reminder for you all that just of our members fund. Now, if you're enjoying the lectures, which I know a lot of you are, you keep coming back, why not think about helping the WEA to support those who need it with free WEA membership so that they can access all of this content as well. I'll pop the link into the chat. Let me just do that just now. So have a little think about it, have a look. Let me just copy and paste this. If you could take some time just to have a little look, that would be very much appreciated by me. So as I say, I think that is probably it from Joanne and myself. I hope you enjoyed that this evening, and we shall see you next week. Thank you very much.
Thank you.